What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Don't Tell Mom podcast, episode 89 or 90. I can't remember now.
Cullen's lost track.
I've lost track.
We've done so many.
My brain's in all sorts of different places with money and life and all this stuff. So I can't.
That's a normal day for Cullen.
Another number
Cullen's
is
always scattered, right?
another number is something I don't want to have to worry about right now. Oh
hey,
my
guys,
gosh!
Thank you so much for tuning in again this week. We have a very special guest for you today, and we're really excited to dive into and pick this lady's brain. Her name,
oh my gosh.
I was calling her Dorothy because that's how I read it, but her name is Dorothée Loorbach, right?
Dorothée.
Am I saying it right?
Yes, perfect.
Okay,
welcome.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm great.
Good.
Thank you.
Now, Dorothée is from, she's in Holland right now. Is that where you're from? You're
Yes,
born and raised?
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. I think this is like the furthest guest we've ever
Around
had
the world.
on. I can't think if there's anybody else.
I know we've talked to some of our listeners that are in Germany or in France or like from all over the world, in Scotland, and we have a lot of, but never anybody that we've actually had on the show. So this is crazy. You're like the farthest one from us.
It's an honor.
I am super excited. My sister Britany reached out to you about a month ago when we started coming clean with our debt journey. We've got a series on our main channel just to catch you up. I'm not sure if you've done any of the looking into everything, but it's called Our Debt Disaster because we started realizing how bad off we were and then took the fall on the sword, I guess you could say, and just like put it all out there in the internet world after doing this for so many years and portraying a
happy, healthy financial life.
Right,
yeah.
like a persona that I think a lot of people in the social media world try to portray these days. But
what happened was I was shocked when I saw Cullen post a video on YouTube about like their debt, and I'm thinking that's just something you don't talk about, especially here. Like you don't talk about money, religion, politics. You know what I mean? Like there's just things you don't talk about. And so when they posted it so publicly on YouTube, I was like, holy moly, that's crazy, that they're just coming all out and just bearing their souls to say. And but I was proud of him for doing that because this is his life, and he does share every other aspect of his life with his audience and stuff. He's a YouTuber, and that's what he's been doing for so long. So, it's crazy. And I almost feel like I don't even want to watch his videos because I feel like I'm intruding on his but he's telling everybody everything and
just being honest.
Being honest about it. So I applaud you for that. But when that first came out, I was actually looking online and I saw you in your TED Talk about it's called 10 Things I Learned from Losing a Lot of Money. And
that's what they turn it into. I just said 10 things I learned from being broke, but they thought that was too hard.
And to put a spin on it like that.
Like you had it and then you lost it.
That's the thing that's so intriguing about this is reaching out to you was the basis of it was to talk about money, but then after I started doing research on you and
so much more than
so much deeper about life. So I need everybody listening and watching to take a deep breath, close your eyes, not if you're driving, but just close your eyes because we're about to get into some deep life stuff here, I think. Yeah. And that's what's so deeply intriguing to me, especially my wife. She's doing this whole inner child series on her podcast right now where she's discovering self-awareness and that's I was like, oh my god,
Cullen was like, oh my gosh,
this is crazy.
Y'all would be besties. You and his wife would just be because y'all are your content's just so similar. But
tell us about yourself, how you got started in this whole journey of being a speaker and author and
mother and so many things.
Are you asking me to explain to you how I became a mother?
I know how you did that. But where did you, just give us a little background about yourself. You said you came from, or you're born and raised in Holland, and you've got 2 children, right?
Yes, 2 children. I have a 15-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son.
Yes, you did them far apart.
I did, and 2 different fathers as well. So I'm like this ghetto mom in the Netherlands. No, it's
that's normal
here.
Right.
So no, I worked in advertising for a long time. I was a really bad student. I was good at learning, but the school didn't interest me at all. I actually did. I was a senior in high school in Wyoming in the U.S. for a while.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I was very disappointed.
Wyoming, why
the American school system. But yeah, that was good for my education, staying in Wyoming for a year. No, I was 17 at the time. Then I studied. I went to art school for one day, and then decided to become an elementary school teacher. And then I studied marketing and started working in advertising. I did that for about 20 years altogether, all kinds of jobs. And I could never stick around somewhere because I would always fight with my boss. I just thought I knew better. And then I started working as an HR manager for a consultancy firm where I had a really great boss. And he one day just said, well, we can do one of two things. You can either just go back to HR and not get involved with the marketing division in Amsterdam anymore, because that's what I did because I liked the marketing things. Or you just stop wasting your talent and quit your job, and I will give you your first assignment. I'll be your first client for just a little bit of money, but that he would be the first client. And so I did.
Wow.
Not right away.
He gave you the opportunity to take that leap of faith. Huh?
Yeah, he did. But first I had to crash my car and have a near burnout and my relationship with the father of my daughter. And that was all within a month.
Oh, wow.
And then I at the moment when I crashed my car, I went afterwards. I went to the hospital, and the surgeon said, "This is not something you should have survived without a scratch." So then I thought, well, maybe this is a wake up call. Yeah. And then I started my own company.
Okay, so it took a lot.
Wow.
To get you going.
Yeah, it did. And then it went really well, and all I wanted was to have fun and to feel free. And I did, and I made a lot of money, and I was good at my job. But then it started to feel superficial, and the money didn't feel like it belonged to me because there was so much more than I needed. So then I would spend it all right away as soon as I could. I would panic every time I had money. And then I met someone who was in the business of making people happy. And we connected. He was drunk. He was an Englishman. And I met him at a party, which is a good basis for starting a company together.
Yeah, it is, of course.
And then we started to help people find their purpose. And that was amazing. We really changed lives. But then it all just came to us. Naturally, we knew what to do, and then it didn't feel right to ask for money, so we did it for free. And then after 2 years, I had no money left at all. We already separated because we both had to take care of our own families, and so I went on by myself, but just doing what I loved, but not charging enough money for it. And then one day I had nothing left.
Wow!
And that's when the story of the TED Talk started.
Yeah, and then you were broke.
Yes, I was. Yes. Very much.
Now, what do you mean when you say you were helping other people? What was it that you were passionate about? It sounds like you loved doing what you did. What were you doing?
We help people find their purpose, or to get into the direction of what their purpose could be.
Like a life coach.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Sense.
Yeah, a little bit, but not with all the. Most life coaches tend to be a bit therapeutic, and we wanted to stay far away from that, and we just wanted to wake people up.
Okay.
Which is what we did in a few hours, and then I could just sense that once they thought they found the answer, I could sense if it was true or not, and then the real fun started. But I had no idea what I was doing. Looking back, I just yeah. And I could look a little bit deeper.
Okay, so you're finding people that needed some guidance and some help, and you were that person for them then.
Yeah, I think all people need some help with that, because we're all kind of asleep and pursuing things.
Now, is this when you became an author? When did you start writing?
Not really. I started writing. Well, I wrote a children's book before, and when I started my own business, I started as a copywriter.
Okay.
For advertising agencies and companies, and that was just something I knew I could do, because I thought that my former boss would always write
the checks,
crappy things.
Yeah,
that too.
So then I just knew I had a talent for it, and I was asked to write a children's book for a company which I did, and but the real writing didn't start until I was broke, because then I had no way out, because it was in the middle of summer, and I worked with students mostly, and I didn't have any income. So then I decided to just learn from the best and write a book about it and sell the book right away. So then I started writing the book, which is called, in English will be called Broke Not Broken. And I thought it would take me 6 to 12 months, but it took me 3.5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. A little longer than you anticipated.
As Cullen just mentioned, money problems are never about money, right? They're always about something deeper. And so I kept reaching deeper levels of the book.
I was about to say there's so much to unpack here. Because, like you said, it's not just about money. It's about, I don't even know where to start. Okay. First, we've got so much in common. I can relate to you so much, because in the TED Talk you mentioned about how you had 5 IRS or tax notices with a deadline, essentially. And we, in one of our very first videos that we shared, we held up a certified letter that we got in the mail. The day we sat down to decide to make this, we got a knock on the door right before we started filming, and it was the mailman saying, "Certified, do you want to accept this?" And we were like, "What the crap?" So that's just,
there's the IRS saying you owe us a bunch of money,
and you got a deadline, essentially, or you lose everything.
We were about to lose your house.
Yeah. We had a month, essentially, to get current on $13,900, and it was just one of those, which we did. We ended up pulling it off. By selling everything on Facebook Market, and just you really learn to humble yourself in that period of time. I mean, it's just everything is totally in a different perspective once you come out of the closet, the debt closet, I guess.
Yeah, to break the taboo.
Which is what both of y'all have done. I mean, that's what you did. So you went on. So you decided, okay, I'm broke and this has failed, or you kind of, you said in your head, I'm guessing that you're an entrepreneur, and so you want to succeed, and you want to show people that you know what you're doing, and it's that pride and all that stuff. And then you just decided one day to write on Facebook that it wasn't working, right? And that's kind of what started it.
Yeah, but I had no idea at the time. I had no idea that people until that moment thought I was successful. And then suddenly they found out that I wasn't in it, and they made a big deal out of it. And before I published the video on Facebook, I asked 2 or 3 people in my business network, this is what I'm thinking about doing if I don't have another solution before then. And they said, well, that's going to be suicide as an entrepreneur, because nobody will ever work with you again.
Yeah.
And it was that the contrary was true, actually, because people tend to really like things that are real.
Right.
So, yeah.
And one of the things that you touched on, and I think it was that TED Talk, maybe it's a different video I watched, you would get all the visual discrepancy and hate on the posts, but the actual people that really showed a lot of interest were the people, and we get the personal emails that saying they're proud of you and you're in the same boat, and it's that valuable life lesson that you're teaching them that kind of inspired you to keep going and keep pushing through. That's just so amazing.
I would have kept going anyway. I'm sure this is the same for you, but it pushed me to believe that I had something to share with people, something valuable, and that it wouldn't really stop after the book. And I wasn't sure if I should do a TED Talk. I didn't want to, because I thought my story was so superficial and such a, privileged, white, Western first world woman screwed up her business, and now I'm on a stage with refugees and people who are sick and disabled and lived through terrorist attacks, and here I am with my story. So I was actually really embarrassed to share this story. Oh, wow. So then when I got the messages based on the TED Talk, I was really grateful that people shared their experience from my talk with me, because I wasn't alone, and neither are you. But most people are afraid to say it out loud, aren't they?
Right. Yeah. Especially this day and age.
Yeah.
With the public
Cullen always calls it keeping up with the Joneses.
Keeping up with the Joneses, right? Yeah. One of the things.
Oh, it's exhausting.
Right. And now it's like once you have that realization and like actual purpose on life, it's I don't know. I just in the past 2 months or month and a half that we've come out, it's just like my whole mindset has changed, and it's been a whole process for the past year, I would say, as far as like decluttering your mind and decluttering your life, and then doing the self-aware stuff and finding your inner child you touched on in some of your videos, and that's been the deepest part for me and my wife. But discovering where you came from and having those, feeling your emotions, and is something that I've never done recent. I mean, I have in the past, and I guess I probably cry more on the internet than any other guy, I would say. But I always try to suppress it because I'm too prideful and stuff. But when you're actually able to feel it, and then, like you said, feel it and then move on, and the whole learning to react and not respond. I mean, respond, don't react. That's also super powerful.
Well, so I know we've seen it, but tell our listeners a little bit about what your ideas are and what your general perception is of like money and its correlation to happiness and all that.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, I've listened to it. I know Cullen's listened to your videos, but I know a lot of our listeners might not have. So, just want to kind of give them an idea of what you're saying.
Well, one of the most important things I learned about money is that it is never about money, but it's mostly about value. And if you refuse to ask money for the things that you do, then you refuse to value yourself. And it's the other way around as well, because I discovered that money is not. Money itself is not valuable, but it stands for something. So in my case, in my business, it stands for value, and mostly in my private life, which is also my business, of course, it's time. Yeah, we all exchange money for time and time for money, but we forget that if we don't make enough money, or we don't have enough money, or we spend all our money on things that we don't need, on things we don't even care about, like most of us do, except for Cullen and I, probably. Because
all the time.
We've come to the situation where we realize probably that we just need so little to be happy, and that the big things tend to be the little things, and vice versa. But the only way that you can make money not matter is by making it matter first, and understand what it stands for you. Because most people have a very complicated relationship with money, because it stands for something. And I was raised to believe that money wasn't important, and I still believe that. But I attached it to all these opinions about people with money, and how much money I deserve, and how much I can charge, and how much I can have in my bank account. And that was very destructive for me. So I think that for most people, the essence of it is that money, like everything else, is just energy. And it passes through you, or it doesn't. And it becomes something bad, or it becomes something good, but you're the person who decides what to do with it. And I thought I would become a bad person if I would have too much money, but money just makes you more of who you are. And I was,
you already were.
But I was panicking so much when I had more than I thought I deserved, that I spent it on all the wrong things, on clothes, on going out, on traveling, on just to get rid of it.
Girl, I'm the opposite. I thought I needed all the money I needed. I want all the money. I don't think I've ever felt like, I don't need this much.
You just need more?
I just need more, yeah.
I saw a podcast kind of related to this. I think it was Logan Paul's podcast, and they were talking about money and happiness, and if you won $10 million tomorrow,
I'd be so happy.
Okay, and here's the visualization that they put with that. And he stands up. He said, "Here's happiness," and we're going through life. And he started running around the room. He was like, "This is your person, or the people searching for happiness. You're constantly darting around trying to find what happiness is or what makes you happy. And then he said, now here's $10 million. And so you get handed $10 million and you just stop and stand there and you just put a big smile on your face. And he's like, now this makes me so happy. And then he said, then he jumps into his friend's arms and his friend's holding him cradled like a baby. And it's the first thing, and that's the $10 million in his arm. And the first thing the friend said was like, oh, you're hurting my back. And so it's like, along with this $10 million comes so much pain and burden that he had to put the money down in order to go find happiness again. I was like, that's a good way to think about it. Like,
Interesting.
So it doesn't necessarily mean happiness. It means more money, more problems.
I feel like
Sometimes,
I feel like it's like the security of having it though. It's because if you have the money, then you don't have to worry about the bills. And if you don't have to worry and stress about the bills, then you're gonna have more time to focus on your child, or you're going with your friends, or doing whatever. You know what I mean? And going out and doing stuff and having fun. So I'm like, that's how I piece it together.
Well,
but you're the person who decides if you have money worries or not. It doesn't have that much to do with the amount of money that you have. Because I today I'm not worried about money, but I tend to have the same behaviors that I used to. So I remember that a few years ago when I had nothing, my mother would ask me, "What would you do if you had 20,000 euros?" which I think is about $25,000. And I said I would write full time. But then I had the money. And then I was afraid to lose it because I lost all my money. So I needed to keep it in my bank account. And I was still working really hard. And I work a lot with students and recent graduates. And I used to ask them, what would you do with 15 million euros?
Yeah.
And 9 out of 10 would make sure that they would invest it so they would have more money, because they still respond from, or react actually from fear of losing the money. So then today when I ask the question, I say, what would you do if you had $500 billion? And still they will react from fear, because it's not the money itself that's worth anything. It's still the mindset. So what would you do if you had all this money? Do you think you would really do what you would do if you were asked this question? Or would you put it in the bank and hope you wouldn't lose it?
Oh, I probably wouldn't respond in a responsible way anyway. I tell you straight up, I'm gonna go buy a yacht, a house for my mama, some
Well,
cars.
this goes to your TED Talk too. You asked the question. You said, "How many of y'all in the room raise your hands?" Or you tell the story.
I asked who in the room makes more money today than they did at their very first job, and all of them did. Not all of them raised their hands because maybe they were afraid of the next question, but I'm sure all of them did, because we all make more money now than we did at our first job. And then I asked, who of those people still had no money left at the end of the month? And that was most people as well. And that's because of Parkinson's law, because you take up all the space that you have, both in time and in money. And in, when you buy a larger house, then the house fills up with stuff within 6 months as well. But the tragic thing is that most people who have, even when they have a lot of money, they will just change their lifestyle, but not their mindset. So they'll still lose it. It will never be enough.
So that's kind of my point. Like, if you get $10 million, or, I feel like you would buy the yacht and try to keep up with that lifestyle. And that's where you get in trouble, because like you even said, like most people that win the lottery end up going back to being more broke than they were before they won the lottery.
Yeah, I've seen a lot. Yeah,
but Cullen, you and I, we probably both turn it around, right?
Right.
We don't need as much as we did because we know what it's like to have nothing. So today I feel like I've won the lottery. I don't have that much more money in the bank, but I have so much more time, and I know what I'm doing with my time, and I don't have to spend all this money on clothes and on luxury items and on getting away from something. I'm just really happy with what I have, and I live a more conscious life because it's not in stuff. It's so much more. It's not even a minimalist lifestyle. Today I use what I need, and everything else is
Not all the extra.
Well, yeah.
You know, it's funny because I was actually watching or listening to something you were saying, Cullen, the other day, and it was like, I watched a video where you were talking about how much you used to spend, and like your emotional state was that you were not in a good mood, and I can tell my brother when he's not in a good mood, and he was just really upset with himself and angry with himself at the money that he had wasted on these frivolous things. And so it made me think, like, you're still letting it win. You know what I mean? Like, you're still letting that win, because now you're upset, you know, and it seemed like you were sad, and it's like, I don't want you to be sad about it. It's like, okay, this happened, let's move, you know, you had money, now you don't, let's move on.
No, but yeah, I see what you're saying from the outside looking in, but inside I had to have that feeling of looking back on the past, because, and she talks about this a lot, of, oh God, this is so deep. Like, where would you be in 10 years, or if you know, or looking back 10 years ago, you're not the same person. Looking back a year ago, you're not the same person. And so to see yourself and your spending habits, me and my wife just did a comparison video of our February bank statements from last year.
Yeah, I think I saw that when you showed how much money you spent on each thing.
Yeah. And so looking back and just putting yourself back in that, or seeing how stupid you were, it's just so aggravating.
To me, it felt like you're still letting it affect you now. There was a time in my life where I made a whole bunch of money, and it was like I was constantly, and I was just blowing money to blow money. I go to these boutiques and spend thousands of dollars, and it's just like whatever. And then a friend of mine was doing the same thing, and he was in that same stage. He was successful and was making a lot of money too, and he never had money. He was always asking me for money, and I looked at him one day. I said, "Where did all your money go? You just got paid, $5,000. Where did it go?" And he just looked at me and said, "I lived." You know what I mean? And it was like that mentality of like, no regrets, don't care, I'm going out and spending it and partying and making it rain and all this. That mentality, it's like that individual person and who he was, he would never have apologized for that. Even now, broke, 10 years later, you know, he would never say, he would never sit and think, oh man, if I hadn't have blown all that money, I'd still have some today. Because he probably wouldn't, you know. And so, but like that mentality, that is just, that's who he is. That's the kind of person that he is. He apologizes to nobody for anything, and just lives his life. And whereas you, I feel like you take this burden on of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe if I hadn't spent that $10,000 that month on this stupid shit, then I would have $10,000 today to pay this bill from the IRS. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. No, I don't. I think it was more just like discovering or seeing the numbers, visualizing, and seeing where. It sucks to see the I lived mentality back then versus how much more mature I am mentally now. You know what I mean? And so now it's like, okay, live and learn and move on. And also it gives us a video to create every month now, so we can look back on that. So it's helpful as that aspect goes. But just being able to see that, and then being upset with the way you used to be, and then moving on from that, I don't know. What would you say to somebody? Because I've had this kind of confrontation before in the past. We've been doing the Dave Ramsey stuff. I don't know if you're familiar with Dave Ramsey, but he does the cash envelope system, where you basically like live like your grandmother. You put all your money in an envelope, and you tell your money where to go each month, and you spend it. And once that envelope for food or clothing is empty, you say you're basically at a zero-based budget at the end of the month. And, you know, if you put some in savings, you put some in clothing, you put some in food. But I got into a conversation with somebody that was telling me this method was dumb, and I want to live, and you only live once, so just run everything up on your credit card, and then, you know, I don't know.
Die in debt.
Yeah, what the most important thing that I do now is that with every time I want to spend something and I'm not sure and it doesn't feel exactly right, I make a distinction between what do I want now and what do I want the most. And to me, that's the best decision that I can make. So when I'm tired and I work really hard and I drive by a sushi place, what I want now is to just get some sushi and not cook and go home and enjoy the sushi because I love the sushi. But what I want the most is to pay off my mortgage early. so that I have income when I'm older, or when I get sick, or one of my loved ones gets sick, and I can afford to not work because I want to take care of one of my loved ones. And before it was just, I live now, I live today, and I only invest in creating happy memories. Like your friend, Brittany.
Yeah. Yeah, I live.
Your friend probably doesn't have a sick mother right now, or doesn't have a reason to need to have money right now. But if you look at what matters the most to you, then in most cases it will be something that costs money, even though money is not important to you. So I actually use the same system, but online. I use Profit First, which comes from the US. Do you know it?
What's it called? Profit First?
Profit First. It's by Michael McCallum, something. And yeah, if you just Google Profit First, it's a great system. It's mostly for business, but I use it for business, and it works with about 6 accounts where you first take your profit. That's the very first thing that you take out of your account every month. And then you pay your taxes and your bills and everything else, and make sure in your salary, and you just make sure that there's enough money for everything at all times. And I use a system like that, the thing with the grandmother and the cash envelopes. I use that for my private accounts. So there's this account for emergencies, there's an account for dreams, there's an account for fun, there's an account for helping other people, there's accounts for everything. And what really works for me is to not wait for money to be there at the end of the month, because there won't be any.
Right.
So when I want to buy something that I don't really need but that matters to me, like I used to run outside and I needed new shoes, and not having the right shoes was my excuse to not run. So I would just put a little bit of amount into the account every month, and then I bought the best and the coolest shoes that there were, and a new sports watch, and then I was motivated to run, and I could afford to. So I have all these different accounts, and there's always money for everything usually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you seen, just kind of switch gears for a minute, have you seen Frozen 2?
No.
I know that's a random.
On this movie.
I know that's a random question, but golly, we've watched it like 500,000 times with our daughter and son. But my wife doing this inner child stuff, that the correlation and the relevant or the relatable factor there. I was like, she's had to have watched. Listening to some of your videos, I'm like, she's had to have watched Frozen 2, because they touch on some stuff that is so deep in these songs and this,
really?
like, the whole plot of everything, like trusting yourself and figuring out who your inner child is and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it is like, I had to watch it like 3 times to even get some of it, but like just the metaphorical stuff.
Well, what is it? What is touching on your inner child? What does that mean?
To me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
what do you mean? Like, what do you like? I
don't know what it means. With every video I post, I put a disclaimer. I know nothing. I'm not an expert on anything, but I just have these I just kind of shifted from 3D to 5D recently, and now that I have access to more knowledge and a higher consciousness somehow, and I just had these realizations that I always had, but I couldn't really put them together. I didn't have the context, and now I do. So sometimes, but I can't really explain them because I'm not an expert. But I just I believe that we all start out as and the same way, but I believe that we're all perfect, and we're all this human experience of something divine. Whether you're religious or not doesn't really matter. I really believe that, and I've read a lot about quantum physics and stuff. So if you want to look at it from a science point of view, it still comes to the same essence, I think. But I think every version of you is inside you, the good and the bad and the ugly, but it's all there, and the way you were created, as the way you started your life as a baby, I think that's what stays with you. It's just that you grow your consciousness and you grow your experiences and you design your truth and your reality when you grow up. And that could go either way. You can create so many. I'm losing track here completely. I cannot explain this, but
I'm with you.
I did. What I okay. Let's start over. This you as a baby is still inside you. There's still the essence of that is still inside you, and that was 100% pure and true. That's still the essence of you. So I just realized that we are really good to our children and to our family and to our loved ones, and we tend to not be so good to ourselves. But this inner child, this 1-year-old you or the 5-year-old you and the innocent you is still a part of you, and you should treat it nicely. So whenever it's hard for you to treat yourself right, just remember that there's still this child inside of you that you have to take care of and that you have to love, and then it becomes easier.
Okay. Yes, like and there's a saying.
I just keep thinking of my daughter's face. She just turned 1, and her little personality and who she is and how happy she is all the time now, and just how like she wakes up just with joy, every morning just like smiling, and I'm just like, isn't that crazy that that's just how she is? She was just born that way, like,
yes,
because she has no other influences
she's
in life
taught
than just to
shame, and she's taught embarrassment, and she's taught hate, and she's taught disliking something, and we were all born.
I don't want her to learn
to
any
love
of those things.
I know, and it's so crazy, especially like when seeing your child grow up and going through the stages of life. When my daughter was 4, she would get on the stage in front of 500 people and hold a microphone and start. But now as she's getting older, just a year, you can just see the hesitation as she's walking up now with a microphone on, because she's learned to feel an embarrassing feeling, or a nervousness. You start to pick up on all this outside interference. And there was a tweet or something I saw, like, the older we get, the more I realized my parents are just the same age as me, trying to figure this shit out in life, but they're just older. And that's kind of like what it is. Like, every day is like, I feel like it's still 2007. I still feel like I'm 18. Like, you know what I mean? And I'll go try to do a backflip off the wall or something. I'm like, oh God, I'm not 17 anymore. But in my brain or in my consciousness, I feel that way. And there's a book called Homecoming. Have you heard of that?
No.
My wife's been reading it, and it goes into some deep stuff as far as your inner child. And there's actually, and I would want to take a guess and say that, do you do meditation? Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. There's this one part where in the book, I haven't listened to it all the way through by any means. I've only listened to one chapter, but I got to this one meditation part, and then I wanted to like actually focus, so I had to stop, and then I haven't gotten back to it yet. But she went and closed herself in the room the other day and laid on the bed and came out in just like tears, because he takes you in this chapter back to your house that you lived in growing up when you were 6 or 7, and walks you through like a scenario of some sense about where you came from, and like an important event in your life, or I don't even know the context to it, but just the inner child, discovering that inner child, and where these feelings of fear and resentment to your family, and the way you think about stuff, and her love language is personal touch, and why didn't she get that void filled when she was younger, and just that kind of stuff. I think
where all these like emotions grow from, kind of.
Yeah, of just like understanding where you came from growing up, or where we came from, and so I've done a lot of deep diving as far as that goes, about like dad, and like just the non, I don't know, he was more of a military dad as instead of a loving nurturer, as far as towards me, I guess. Yeah. In a sense, and it's not his fault or anything like that. It's just that's who he was. But so I searched out different avenues to fill that, and went down the drug alley, and and you don't realize why you're going down these alleys of trying and testing drugs to suppress feelings. And but now that I'm just more consciously aware of everything, I'm like, oh, that's why I was trying to hide that emotion. Yeah. Instead of just letting it ride out.
Using it as a crutch and stuff.
Yeah. So
and your dad was raised a certain way as well. It occurs to me that you say, well, it was kind of a military dad, not necessarily a loving dad, but I think we all try to love as well as we can. I think every parent, no matter what the result is or how much the children would have liked it to be differently, I think every parent does what they can to be a good parent. We just don't all have the skills, and sometimes our pain from when we were a child was in the way. I have had moments where I blamed my mother for not being a warmer person to me, or not being more cuddly or sensitive to my feelings or things. And then I realized that when I became a mother, I realized that she tried too. And then much later, I realized that when she was 10 weeks old, her mother left her for a long period of time because she had a burnout and she had to be protected. And but my mother was left as a baby, and when she came back to a very loving family, that wasn't safe for her anymore. So there was no true connection for her. She lost the connection, and then she didn't know how to make the connection with me. And she's worked her entire life trying to make that connection. She just didn't know how. But she did love me, and she does love me, and I love her. It's not always necessarily what you need from each other. Yeah. And that could have effect on the way I raise my children as well. I'm a different mother to my daughter than I have been a different mother to my daughter than I am now to my son. And in both cases, it was with decisions I made from love. But when I had my daughter, when she was 2 years old, I still believed that I had to work 80 hours a week in order to be a good mother, to provide for her. And she didn't need any of the things that I thought I needed to buy. She just wanted to sit on the couch with me and read a book. But I had all these convictions about how to be a good parent. And now with my son, I can play with him whenever I like, because I don't need that much time to work. I don't need that much money. I don't need that much stuff. I don't need a status of any kind. So I can be much more of a mother. But maybe I'm a better mother to him now than I was to her then. But in both cases, I tried.
Right. That I remember when I came to that realization that, like, our parents are human beings, and we're just trying, you know what I mean? Because, like, your whole life you just think, like, I thought my dad was 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and there was nothing he could do wrong. And then my mom, you know, she was, we had our ups and downs in my teenage years, and I thought she just doesn't understand me, and, you know, she's out to get me sometimes, and, you know, all these things. And it's just like, and now, well, I mean, over in my 20s and stuff, when I was just able to kind of understand and see them for who they were instead of as a parent, and just see them as a person, it's just, I just remember that thought and that realization that it was just like, oh my gosh, like, you were really struggling. You were really trying. And then I think back about how they did struggle, because my mom, you know, we didn't have money, and it was always a struggle. Money was always a part of the struggle, you know, for us. And just the fact that they were just doing the best they can. And now that especially now that I'm a mother, I think several times a week, you know, the idea will pop into my head. Like, I'll be holding my daughter and thinking, God, you're the most beautiful, perfect little thing I've ever met. You are my whole life, you know, and just thinking all these, it's so emotional. I'm just so overcome with this love for her. And I just, but several times a week, it'll pop into my head. Like, my mom thought the same thing about me. You know what I mean? Like, and it grew into this other relationship, and my mom's my best friend now, but we went through the ringer, you know what I mean? And to think that she was just doing the best that she possibly could with what she was given, and I was not an easy pill to swallow, you know what I mean? And just thinking all these things, and it's crazy how how real that is, you know, how real they are.
So you share the same parents?
Yes.
Yeah. See, you have a completely different perception of who your parents were as well. I have a daughter or a sister who's 2 years younger, and her childhood was completely different than mine, and her memories are completely different, even of the same events.
Yeah.
It's all perception.
That's crazy.
So there's no true memories for either one of you. It's amazing.
We've got a few with it. We're pretty sure we lit that on fire. There's a few that it's like, I'm pretty sure that happened. But like my dad, like he says, more military, and he was that way, but he always called me sweetheart. I mean, there was whereas Cullen never got that emotional, that sweet, kind side of him, because I was his girl. I was his baby girl.
Yeah, baby girl, yeah.
And so his relationship obviously was different, but he was the mama's boy, so his relationship with my mom was a lot different, you know. But you know, going back to the whole the tie between any of this and money, which is you know what we're talking. I always remember that playing a role in our life. I always remember, oh, well, we don't have money to do that. We were always fed and taken care of, and we always had clothes on.
Sorry to interrupt, but what are the most common things that your parents, the convictions that your parents taught both of you about money? What was your dad's main opinion about money, and what was your mom's main opinion about money?
I feel like we just always needed more growing up like that. I don't know. It was just like, we don't have the money for that. If I had $1 for every time I heard we don't have money to do that, we don't have the money for that, then it would be, you know, it was one of those things that was like, it was normal. It was normal to feel like we were on the lower end of the spectrum, and to feel like not worthy. And that, you know, in that sense, like I remember never being able to have friends over to our house because my parents were embarrassed about how small our house was in comparison to our friends, our play dates. Yeah. So like I would go over to sleep over at somebody's really nice house in River Chase, which is where you live now, but like in this nice pretty house in this nice pretty neighborhood, and that was okay. But when it came time for me to be able to invite friends to my house, it was, oh no, we can't invite people here because then they'll see, and it was that shame. They'll see that perception of they'll see that we don't have as much money as them. The parents have to drop the kids off, and my mom didn't want the parents to see where we lived, and that we lived in the bad part of town in a small house and all these things.
We never had we never had to spend the night party through middle school and high school. I think high school was the first.
So I think those kind of things affected me, like personally, when it came to time for me to be an adult. Then it was like I was born a hustler. You know what I mean? I'm ready to hustle.
You need to have money.
You need it. It was a necessity.
I don't remember a distinct conversation ever about money with my parents. Like necessarily like this is how you budget and manage. I don't remember any.
No, me neither.
It was all just catch-22. Like
I talked about money a lot with my dad because I'd go into his bedroom every morning and I'd say, "Dad, I woke up this morning thinking, golly, you are the best dad ever. I have the coolest, most handsome dad." And every morning he'd go, "How much do you want?" and he'd pull out his wallet and I'd say, $1. You know, or $5, can I have $5? You know, and he'd give me $5 or whatever. So it wasn't like we were just deprived and just had no, nothing. But
but it is attached to shame. Not having money is attached to shame. So then I can understand that with you, Britany, wanting to have as much money as you can and being used to being a hustler. That's not about money. That's not about stuff. That's about a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
And that's something completely different.
Well, I feel like I've always wanted more. Like I want to give my kids more than I had. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because for you it's safety, right?
Exactly. That's what goes back to the security. Money is security in my mind.
And I think that's where I got down this slippery slope that I'm on now is providing more and more and more for my kids to make.
I didn't get that good birthday party. Let me give you a $10,000 birthday party. I'm going to give you,
like the most elegant Princess Belle and Beauty and the Beast ball ever and we're gonna have all the friends over, and so it's like I'm living vicariously through my childhood, my inner child, to please that need that was not met
for you
20-30 years later, and doing it in like putting it on my 4-year-old daughter's shoulders I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, God, it's like
when she really doesn't care. She's not going to remember that bell and the ball, and she's not going to remember who was there and what kind of fancy cupcakes you ordered that were 3 million times more than a box of pizza that you could, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
I will say, kind of going back to what you were talking about, like your parenting aspect, as far as like I feel like I like want to hug my son and kiss him and tell him I love him like 10 times more than I feel like I was ever. It goes back to just the whole void. I don't know. The way you were raised it does change the way you raise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really believe that what you have missed as a child is what you want to give to others when you grow up. And I think that goes mostly for your own children. I hugged my daughter every day until she got sick of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep telling her how beautiful she is and how proud I am and how much I like her, and she just bored with me. She might go the other way, and when she has kids, she might think, well, I'm not gonna
Smother them.
I'm not gonna do this. Yeah. But the reason I asked you was because when I was writing the book, slowly it occurred to me that my mother and father each had their convictions about money, and my father was raised. My grandparents were raised very poor because they came from big families, and then when they got together, they decided that they would have no more than 2 children, so they could afford everything they wanted for the 2 children, and they could give them good education, so they could go on to have good jobs and have enough money, so that they all experienced the Second World War, so that was a big thing. So my father was raised with the idea that money equals success or money equals security. Mm-hmm. And my mother came from a very large family as well, but money didn't really matter, but they always felt like they didn't count, like people with more money would look down on them. Mm-hmm. So my mother would never say this to me directly, but when we would visit people who had a lot of money, she would have comments on their lifestyle, like, oh, they're so superficial, they need to spend $20,000 on a couch, and you can't even sit here, and they don't know what life is about. And so there was this conviction that people with money are bad people. So then there's this money equals success and money equals bad people. So my calculation was success is bad. So every time I had more money than I needed, there was something bad that I had to get rid of.
Oh, okay. Now I see where that came from. And that was a very strange pattern that eventually ended up me believing that I wasn't worth that money. And that created a whole strange relationship with money for myself. Yeah, that is
but
crazy.
But it's not true. It's not that my mother believes that people with money are bad people. It's just that when she had a bad day, that would be triggered.
Right. It's like a stereotype.
Right.
The stereotype. What do you feel like? What's your belief now after everything? After having it, losing it, coming back? Like, what do you, and recognizing that that was kind of put on you, was to feel like it's evil or to feel like it's equal success. Like, have you found your own personal idea and belief detached from?
I let go of them.
Yeah.
That's a Frozen song, isn't it?
Let it go. Yeah, exactly.
No, I let go of all my beliefs about, including money. It's just money is money, and it's whatever you make it to be. So if you do something good with it, it's good energy, and if you do something bad with it, it's bad energy. And if you're determined, like I was, that money isn't important, you better make it important, because otherwise it becomes the most important thing in your life. If you have no money, it's the only thing that your brain can afford to think about, and then you reach the opposite effect.
Right.
One of your quotes I was just looking at is really good. It's, the scariest journey you will ever take is the one back to your true self. Mm-hmm. And it's scary to take the time to look back, and it just kind of like looking back at your budget from last month. Like, that's scary. And so and that's who my true self was. And the void I was trying to fill was just spin, show the YouTube world and the world that I can keep up with everything. And then here I am.
But it's still the examples you give are still the outside self. I don't believe that the things you do determine who you are. Well, if you do them long enough and you believe that that's what you are, then that's what you'll become. I believe that, but you are not the things you did in the past. Mm-mm. Because you can reinvent yourself and everything about you. Yes. In every moment, none of the cells in your body today are the same cells they were when you were born. So you recreate your life over and over again.
Yeah.
So I don't feel connected in that way to the things I did that could have been smarter or better or easier. Those were all opportunities for me to learn.
I wholeheartedly believe that. I believe that you can always reinvent yourself, and you can always start over and be and improve yourself. And the more you learn, I think knowledge is power. The more you learn, and the more you put yourself out there to better yourself, I think is what matters. But like, I don't know, for me, my perception of it is like, I don't beat myself up for all the thousands of dollars I spent and wasted. I don't, I try not to even think about that stuff. I try not to worry too much about where the money's going to come from in the future. Like, are we going to be financially stable 5 years from now? Or what's going to happen if Corey loses a job and I'm stay at home and I don't have a job? And then to go back to work, how could we feed I try not to worry about that stuff, even though that's hard to do. That's probably the hardest, is to not worry. But to think about it as like, it's just money. And you know what? If when we run out, we'll go get some more.
One of my mom's famous sayings whenever we go somewhere or something, like family reunion, or I don't know, we talk about like, what are we gonna bring? She's like, I don't know, we'll figure it out when we get there. Yeah, that's just like a running joke between me and Katie. It's like, we'll figure it out when we get there, because that's been my mentality like for our whole marriage. It's like, we'll figure. She's like, Cullen, we have until May before like we can't pay our payroll or our mortgage, and I'm like, all right, we'll figure it out when we get there. and I don't know, at a certain point you got to kind of plan out and kind of take the steps to secure that future, and instead, I don't know,
be responsible.
Yeah, be an adult.
Yeah, I remember this episode of The Simpsons where Homer said that's a problem for future Homer. Or future Homer will deal with it. And that's how I used to go through life.
Yes.
And now I still do the same thing, but I understand that that time is only there in certain dimensions. So then I think, well, future me is already here. So what would the best, biggest, most positive version of myself do now?
Yeah.
And then it's like you take a leap in time to your future better or higher self, and then all the answers are there. But what we tend to do is look at our past selves, and then we're just an accumulation of all our mistakes and all the things that we thought we were worth. And then you there's this glass ceiling that you're building for yourself, because it's based on how much you deserve so far. And if you turn it the other way around and just look at the future self, the biggest version of yourself, then it could all be here as well. So what I try to do is just look at, that's what I see as my true self, is the self of full potential, and the self that is capable of anything, and that doesn't respond from pain or fear or from, things I've missed in my childhood, or that things I wish someone would have said to me or would have confirmed to me or anything. It's just that, what if you would speak completely from everything's love?
Yeah.
Everything's awesome, and everything's good just the way it is.
Well, now that's some advice I can take for sure.
Yeah,
I'm definitely going to use because you said, like, think about if you want sushi. That's my big thing. Like, I want the best food. I want the finest foods every meal. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want, if I have a bad meal, it's going to ruin my whole day, especially right now being pregnant AF. So I like, that's my thing. And Corey's like, it's just a meal. You're going to have another one in a couple hours. Who cares if it was crappy? And I'm like, no, that was terrible. We got to go fix this right now. You're going to spend a bunch of money to buy something delicious. Give me an ice cream. You know what I mean? But it's like that whole, it's not stopping to get sushi. It's like, should I spend? And to me, it's like, oh, that's only a couple dollars. It'll be fine. But like, it's good advice to think, okay, well, yeah, it's a couple dollars now, but think about the interest on those couple dollars. You know what I mean? Or like what paying, like that's one of the things we want to do is pay off our mortgage. Like you said, you want to pay it off early. And so it's like, to think, what would my future set, what, you know what I mean? I want to be there today in the future if I had spent that $15 on sushi. You know what I mean? I would still be one day away from that goal or whatever. So that's a great way to think about it. I don't know. I took that, was like,
you can't get.
What helps with me too is what to say, to ask myself, which example do you want to set for your children? And that makes me go straight to my higher self, because I can't be the crappy self that is lazy or wants to, not have a conscience. it's children don't do what you do, they do what or they don't do what you say, they do what you do.
Right.
Yeah.
So I show my children how things could be.
Yeah. Do it better.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. Do it better. I like that because that's like the most motivating thing you can tell yourself is what example am I setting for my kid? That is really like the most motivation.
Golly, they watch you more than they hear you for sure.
Yeah. Starting to learn.
Yeah,
that.
it doesn't mean I don't mess up, but when I do, I apologize and I try to do better next time. And that's something I think they can learn as well.
Me and my wife, me and Katie, when we get in an argument or something, we've tried. There's been some days we haven't, but like we've tried to apologize to each other in front of the kids as opposed to waiting until they go to sleep and then making up.
Hashing out.
Because all the kids see is an argument, and then I need to go take a break, and I go to my room and I take a time out and calm down, and then she puts them to bed, and we end up hashing it out after they go to sleep, fixing it, and then wake up the next morning and everything's good. So they see fight, and then they say everything's fine, but they don't see how we got to the resolution by apologizing and setting that example. So even with money, just spending cash instead of swiping the card. I posted a picture about that the other day, just how my son was like, "What is this? Like, I've never seen this dollar. Like, all I've seen is a card." Like, so it's just crazy, just seeing that through your own blood. You know, it's I don't know. And then
things I got to start thinking about.
Yeah.
Too, because, my little one, she's my first one, but she's starting to pay attention. I can tell.
Yes, they're sponges.
So I'm glad that I'm learning all this stuff now. You know what I mean? I'm glad I'm talking to people like you, and you kind of. But I'm glad that I'm trying to figure this out and be better.
Well, and the biggest thing is just the time. Like you can't get this hour back. It's already gone, and so you're here now.
Yeah, but it's a valuable one.
It is, but we are. I don't know. 5 years ago, there's little pebbles and stepping stones that led to this very point in time right now to get us on this Skype call all the way to Holland.
That's a whole other conversation.
Right? Yeah, no, it's just crazy. Like the whole time and everything. You can't. Time is more important than money and everything.
Okay,
else.
now I'm gonna take us back in time. I'm gonna take us back in time before we gotta close out here. I've got to ask, just like everyone that comes on the show, I have to ask, what is your best don't tell mom story?
Oh, yes.
There's so much I did tell my mom. It's ridiculous.
I was thinking the car crash burning thing was a good one.
Was she strict? Anyway. Was she like real strict with you?
No, she wasn't strict at all, and neither was my dad. What my parents did really well, and what I try to do with my children is that we had so much freedom, but every time we wanted to do something where other parents would say, "No, you can't do this," they would say, "What are the consequences?" and think about them and take responsibility for the consequences before you do something.
Right.
So, and then I had total freedom, and I could go out whenever I liked, but I couldn't throw up a text the next Monday.
Easier
then I
to beg
would go.
forgiveness. Easier to beg forgiveness than ask permission. What I always say.
Yeah, but if nothing is forbidden, then there's no use in doing it. And then when I was 17, I moved to the U.S. And then everything is forbidden in Wyoming.
Okay, so what did you do?
I didn't do anything because I was free to do anything I wanted, but I was amazed at how many 13, 14-year-olds would have had alcohol poisoning or abortions or drug use or date rapes or things that situation they got themselves into because nothing was out in the open. Every parent there would say, my child won't do a thing like that. And every parent would tell their child, you can't do this.
Like
and then
red button.
Everything that's forbidden. Yeah, right. Yeah. So then everything becomes exciting. And I was allowed to do anything, and I didn't.
Right.
It wasn't that exciting.
I think that's
the consequences.
That is what's wrong with America.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. In comparison to other countries.
Yeah.
Okay, if you say yes, you can do it. If you legalize these things and make these things, not forbidden, the forbidden fruit, then you're not going to have so many people wanting
the abundance in the public eye of marijuana or alcohol, whatever.
Well, what is it, Switzerland or something? They have needles on the street corners that say, okay, if you're going to do it, use a clean needle. You know what I mean? Like, it's not. I don't know. I was reading something about that and the effect and how their drug use is so much lower than ours because it's not
like a red button. Like
it's
not,
talked about and it's okay. It's like, okay, well, you know, you need some help. I don't know. It's just different.
I never did drugs. I never drank too much. I never put myself in danger.
But you were allowed to do whatever you want. You were allowed to make the decision for yourself.
Yeah, they were informed decisions.
Well, did you ever do anything that you just embarrassed and you just didn't want your mother to know that you actually made the wrong decision?
Went to a boy's house.
What? No, not really.
No,
I didn't. No.
She's good, Cullen.
No, my mom was the type who would embarrass me by when I was 13. She would say, if you're ready for sex and you don't want to go to the doctor and ask for birth control, go through me because I'd rather arrange this for you than have you pregnant or in danger or if you have any questions. And even my dad.
That's good.
Yeah.
My dad came up to me when I was, I think, 13, and he wanted to be a modern dad. So one day he said, well, if you have any questions on any topic, you can always come to me. And then my sister and I took total advantage of that and just asked my dad, what's a vibrator? And we knew. We just wanted to make him suffer.
That's hilarious.
He's like, honey, I need your help.
Yeah. No, I think one of the main things that I didn't tell my mom was I think how I spent my money when I had a lot of money and how I was in trouble when I didn't have any. And one thing that was last year I did, I decided to do ayahuasca. And I knew she would be very worried about it, so I didn't tell her.
Is that like a psychedelic? Ayahuasca?
It's a plant medicine from the Amazon, and I'm not sure how to translate it, but there's this thing in there that's called DMT, which also
I've heard about this.
Gives you really, really amazing insights. But you can either have this really nice psychedelic dream, or you could end up in a nightmare and face all your demons. You never know what you're going to end up with.
Yeah. It's like a bad trip.
It lasts for 8 hours, so there's no escape.
Wow.
Once it's in your body, you just have to face it.
I've heard Joe Rogan talking about this and how, like, as far as like finding your inner self, like that DMT is like one of the biggest.
I had a friend do it and had like the craziest story.
You end up confronting your consciousness essentially in this third dimension of crazy.
Yeah, I think doing DMT is probably something I want to tell Mom.
She still doesn't like it. She likes what it led up to, because that's the moment because I always knew that I was capable of thinking really well, but then I wanted to find out what are the limits to my brain and what's behind it, because at some point you just go around in circles, right? You just try to, you just know how well you can think, and then you use your brain for everything. But I thought there was more, so then I wanted to go beyond, to expand my brain,
right?
So to speak. And,
that's awesome. I want to do that.
I would never advise anyone.
I'm not going to do it now. I'm not going to do it pregnant, but one day.
No, you can't do it pregnant either. I would wait for at least a year until after pregnancy. If I were
get a sitter. I'm going to get a sitter that day. But I've heard some crazy things, because it's natural, isn't it? DMT, it's like you produce it.
You have natural in your dreams. You produce it when you sleep.
It is natural, but it's heavy stuff. And I'm really sensitive to all kinds of substances, and especially ayahuasca. I was in this trip for about 3 weeks.
Really?
Every night I would wake up at 3:33 exactly, and not knowing which dimension I was. But they told me that was not what usually happens.
I've heard some crazy experiences. My friend was telling me about her experience, and she's a very spiritual person and wanted to do it for that, to be closer to just for that reason, because she's just so spiritual, and she is a changed person. I mean, from that experience, and she was telling me she could remember what was going on, and just like how she was removed from her body and was looking back down on herself, kind of thing. And it was like just the craziest, trippiest experience. But she you could tell in the way that she spoke and the way that she wanted to tell me about it, and like her opinion of life and her views of life, and it just opened her mind and brain. She's a different person today than the girl she's one of my best friends, and before that to now, she's a different person because of that.
That's the only reason I'm intrigued by it when I hear Joe Rogan and talk to the guests that he has on, because they literally are. They talk about that. They talk about how they view the world in a different perspective, and they're completely changed as far as their.
It's just scary because it's like a drug. Because don't do that.
Scary.
Don't do that.
It took me 3 years to build up the courage, but I was drawn to it, and it just kept getting stronger. And that's what they say happens too. But this was both the most beautiful and most terrifying experience of my life.
I bet.
3 weeks.
That's probably what makes it so beautiful, is because it is so terrifying. Like,
what is it like set up? Like you had to like be in a safe spot.
That's how I would do it if I wanted to. Try.
Yeah, you would have to be. I stayed at the. I knew that they were very trustworthy, and they don't do it where you can leave afterwards. You have to stay. Yeah. Spend the night in the building and make sure everyone's okay, and it's you're fine. And then there's a lot of aftercare if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Wow. And it wasn't cool. Full time for 3 weeks. It was only
just flashbacks.
It was only when my children were not staying with me.
Mm-hmm.
So somehow I was conscious somewhere of when it was okay to be open to those dimensions and when not to.
Well, don't tell Mom.
She knows now. She knows.
That is so crazy.
That's good. That's a good one. I like that.
Thank you so much for coming on today. I know we've kept you so long, but I mean, I could probably keep going.
I could talk to you for hours.
I know.
This is amazing.
I know.
Like, I want to get you on our channel, on the main channel, and talk like
Katie. Yeah,
golly, Katie, my wife.
Y'all
would have a good time talking about all this deep stuff. Where can everybody find you on the internet? You got an Instagram page, and you've got I saw you
and your book.
Kicked up a YouTube channel recently.
Mm-hmm.
Tell everybody where they can get you.
Oh, my Instagram is called Sound of Confetti.
Sound of Confetti.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
I love that.
And my YouTube is just my name, which is impossible to. Can you say it again?
We're gonna put the link.
Dorothée.
Dorothée Loorbach
with 2 E's.
Yeah. It's like Dorothy, y'all.
Yeah, like Toto.
It's exactly the same name. It's just the French version.
Yes, very French.
Yeah, I'll put all the links below. And you got a book coming out. What was it? Something in Gurus and
the first one is Broke Not Broken.
Yeah,
that was my first book, and the thing I'm writing now is Gurus and Sneakers.
Not socks, sneakers.
Yeah, and I've read some quotes on your Instagram from your new book, and I'm excited to read that. So
thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on and just talking with us. It's fun to have a guest on that's like we can just sit and talk to, and instead of very interviewee, you know what I mean? It's just like one of the homies hanging out in the basement.
Yes,
this is amazing.
Yes, thank
and
you.
now you need to go get in bed here soon because it's like tomorrow over there.
It's 5:45 in the afternoon.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you all so much for listening. Make sure you favorite this podcast and hit the like button if you're watching us on YouTube and all that good stuff, and share with your friends. Y'all share us on Instagram in your stories and your feed, and get us out there so other people can come and hear this amazingness that we're speaking over here.
Go check out Dorothée, and thank y'all for watching.
Thank you for coming. All right, we'll see y'all next time.
Peace.